Coming up, more money, more problems. Goldman Sachs was charged for fraud, and now the investors are looking for a lawsuit against them. We have the latest update.
And find out which shuttle plunged back into the Earth's atmosphere this morning, and which one's raring to go. That and more on District Wire News, straight ahead.
Good evening, I'm Evan Banks.
And I'm Zulekha Hussain. More bad news for banking giant Goldman Sachs. The Securities and Exchange Commission is charging the company with fraud, and as Arisa Escalera reports, this may have serious implications for the banking industry as a whole.
The charges filed by the SEC on Friday hit Goldman Sachs harder than they had anticipated. The lawsuit comes after a year of intense criticism over the company's pay and business practices. Goldman released a statement saying the lawsuit is completely unfounded in law and fact. However, these charges could affect the way U.S. banks are allowed to operate in the future.
Congress, and particularly the Democratic Party and President Obama, are pushing very, very hard for regulatory reform of the big banks in the United States. They want to get rid of this idea that banks are too big to fail.
Some applaud the proposed changes, saying the banking process has become too clouded and difficult to understand. But some say they're hesitant because they fear stricter banking regulations could negatively impact the U.S. economy.
So as we go forward through this regulatory reform thing, we need to think as a country, do we want to let Deutsche Bank be the biggest bank in the world? Do we want Credit Lyonnais or BNP in Paris to be the biggest bank in the world? That will provide competitive advantages to them over us.
This lawsuit is expected to spur others, but for now, no criminal charges are expected. From Washington, Arisa Escalera, District Wire News.
Air passengers in the UK remain grounded as the ash plume from the Eyjafjallajökull volcano in Iceland continues to keep planes on the tarmac. Passengers expected air travel in London to resume today, but only northern UK airports were allowing planes to fly. Now a new ash cloud from the volcano is moving towards the UK, and airport officials say the planes may remain grounded for some time. British Airways says that the flight ban is costing them around £200 million a day.
And the death toll is rising to more than 2,000 after an earthquake struck China last week. China's news agency says that the 6.9 magnitude earthquake in the Qinghai province killed 2,039 people. Chinese President Hu Jintao called on rescuers to continue the search for survivors. Other officials expressed concern about sanitation due to contaminated water supplies.
The Space Shuttle Discovery landed safely today at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida after a day's delay due to low clouds. The shuttle was on a mission to stock up the International Space Station. After Discovery, the next shuttle, Atlantis, will launch on May 14th for a similar operation. These missions are devoted to delivering spare parts and supplies to the space station before the shuttle fleet is retired, and the station becomes less dependent on capable Russian, European, and Japanese cargo craft.
Maryland residents will be dishing out $5 million for the Speed Cameras program for 2011. The cameras aren't nabbing enough drivers to pay for the $1 million operating costs. In the last 5 months, the state was only able to generate about $500,000 from the 20,000 speeding tickets issued. The state says the budget gap is mainly because of the snowy winters.
Friday marked the 3-year anniversary of the Virginia Tech massacre, the deadliest on-campus shooting in American history that killed 32 people. As violent crimes on collegiate campuses escalate, Philippa Levenberg reports on how local universities are taking steps to prevent another Virginia Tech tragedy.
Violent attacks on U.S. college campuses are on the rise. This is according to a recent FBI report released on the anniversary of the 2007 Virginia Tech massacre. The study found that the majority of campus crimes occurring in the past century were committed in the last 20 years. 6 burglaries have occurred at American University residence halls in the last month, according to Public Safety.
The one problem we have on this campus is theft. A lot of students will leave their things unattended in the library and TDR, even in their residence hall.
Public Safety is investigating who is behind the recent burglaries. One American University student says his basketball teammate and resident at Anderson Hall was a victim of this kind of crime.
His room got broken into, and he got his TV, his Xbox, and a bunch of other electronics stolen from his room.
Sifri, who is in charge of crime prevention at AU, says there are lessons to be learned from Virginia Tech, where warning signs of the shooter's suspicious behavior went undetected.
We asked the student population that if they start seeing somebody who is excelling in class and all of a sudden drops off, isn't going to class, isn't, not sleeping, whatever, to report it to us.
Students can protect themselves by keeping a close eye on their personal belongings and reporting strange behavior. Philippa Levenberg, District Wire News.
And residents in Northwest D.C. are being warned about a string of recent home robberies in the area. Robbers have hit nearly 30 homes in the Chevy Chase, Tenleytown, and Forest Hills neighborhoods since the beginning of March. In most cases, the robbers are breaking windows or busting down doors to enter the homes. To keep your home safe, officials recommend keeping your doors and windows locked and leaving on your home's security system on, even if you're inside the house.
Today, the D.C. City Council is voting to legalize medical marijuana. The proposal is largely supported by the City Council, but what will it mean for district residents? Gabrielle Jones has more.
People in Washington are buzzing about the City Council's vote today. The proposal will allow marijuana to be prescribed to registered patients. New facilities will give authorized patients 1 month's supply. One American University professor thinks the council's proposal can work.
I think you have to kind of look at the pros and cons. You have to also take into account the administrative difficulties of actually implementing such a legalization.
14 U.S. states have already legalized medical marijuana. Like in the district's plan, these states limit the amount of the drug patients can have and charge fees. American University students think the law is an economic issue.
Well, personally, I think the government's really just sidestepping around the issue. It's been shown that marijuana is about a $10 billion a year industry, and not to mention the money that we spend to keep drugs illegal, which is around the $20 billion mark.
It seems to me that it's more of a sin prohibition rather than one that is based in actual concern for people's health.
33% of Americans favor medical marijuana and 55% oppose legalization. D.C. officials hope their proposal will be a model for other jurisdictions. Gabrielle Jones, District Wire News.
Scientists are one very small step closer to creating Viagra for women. Pfizer says they have created a new drug prototype that helps understand female sexual arousal better. The drug was tested on rabbits. Researchers say it increases blood flow to genitalia, but does not help all female sexual arousal disorders. The study was published in the British Journal of Pharmacology.
Processed foods could be getting a little bit more bland as the Food and Drug Administration announces today to limit the amount of salt consumed by the general public. Leslie Byford reports.
The government and food industry are coming together to help Americans kick their love of salty foods by limiting the amount of salt in food products. Health experts say that less sodium in everything from soup to nuts would prevent problems like heart disease and prevent thousands of deaths due to hypertension.
I think the great positive is a point that was made in the article is that 77% of the food that 77% of the sodium that Americans are taking in on a daily basis is coming from processed food. Only about 11% of it is coming from either adding it to when you're cooking or putting it on at the table. So that represents a big problem.
The FDA is currently analyzing the amount of salt in food products such as spaghetti sauces and bread to determine what limitations should be made. However, while the new regulation may be good, some say the biggest hurdle is getting the American palate to adjust to having less salt in their meals.
It's very likely that certain sales, will stop frequenting certain restaurants or buying certain food items because it doesn't have the same flavors that it used to.
The initiative is set to get underway this year. The FDA hopes to phase out the use of salt over a 10-year period. This is the first effort to legally limit the amount of sodium in food products. For District Wire News, I'm Leslie Byford.
An American university is partnering with the Smithsonian Institution to hold events on campus this month. They're planning events like evenings with Pulitzer Prize-winning authors, White House correspondents, and renowned jazz musicians. The programs are open to the public but require tickets. For a full list of events, go to www.american.edu and search for Smithsonian.
Coming up after the break, Professor John Watson is joining us in the studio to discuss the D.C. voting bill's constitutional relevancy and its effect.
And Apple's new Gizmo may not be as in sync with some college campuses as it would like to be. Find out if AU is affected.